Oh, God! Is anyone there? Help me!
Hold on! We've got her!
Lay her down carefully!
Medic, hurry!
She buried herself alive the day she let another woman become her. Vivian Ashford spent 4 years in a coma after a car crash that should have killed her. When she finally woke up, she learned something no doctor could have prepared her for. Her sister-in-law, Renata Cole, had quietly stepped into her life. Her name, her inheritance, her place at the family table. Renata told everyone Vivian died in that hospital bed. She wore Vivian's jewelry to family dinners. She told Vivian's own childhood stories at parties, as if she had lived them herself. Tonight, at the reading of the family patriarch's will, Renata is about to accept a $40 million inheritance under a dead woman's name. What she doesn't know is that the dead woman is standing in the room, holding a serving tray, watching every lie unfold. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to watch someone steal your entire life, stay until the end, because tonight she gets it all back. Don't scroll past this one. How did Renata Cole convince an entire family, a team of lawyers, and a small Charleston social circle that she was Vivian Ashford? What happened to the real Vivian during those 4 missing years, and why did no one come looking for her? And when the truth finally surfaces in front of 60 guests and one very nervous family lawyer, who else in this house already knew? Before the accident, Vivian Ashford was the eldest daughter of Charleston shipping magnate Walter Ashford. She ran the family's charitable foundation. She was engaged to a man named Marcus Voss, and she was, by every account, the golden child of a family built on old Southern money. Vivian was warm but guarded. She trusted easily and paid for it often, especially when it came to her brother's wife. Renata Cole married into the family 6 years earlier when she wed Vivian's younger brother, Julian. Renata came from nothing, and she never let anyone forget it, though rarely out loud. She smiled at every dinner, complimented every dress, and quietly resented every room she wasn't the center of. Friends of the family later described her as endlessly helpful. In hindsight, they said, she was studying them. The night of the accident, Vivian was driving home from a fundraiser when her car went off a bridge outside the city. She was pulled from the wreckage alive but unresponsive. Renata was the first family member to arrive at the hospital, and she stayed by Vivian's bedside more than anyone. The family called her selfless. No one thought to ask why she was always the one answering Vivian's phone. While Vivian lay in a coma, Renata used those long months to make herself indispensable. She took over Vivian's role at the family foundation. She learned Vivian's handwriting well enough to sign documents. She began referring to herself, in small ways at first, using details from Vivian's own childhood. A trip to Savannah. A dog Vivian had as a girl. Nobody noticed the substitution happening one memory at a time. 14 months into the coma, with Vivian showing no signs of waking, Renata quietly petitioned the court, with the family's grieving blessing, to have Vivian declared legally deceased. It was framed as mercy. It was, investigators would later determine, the final piece Renata needed. With Vivian legally dead, her identity, and everything attached to it, became available to whoever could convincingly wear it. Renata began a slow, deliberate transformation, cosmetic procedures to mirror Vivian's features. Vivian's wardrobe moved into her own closet, Vivian's engagement ring worn on her right hand as a tribute. She claimed, though paperwork would later suggest otherwise. When Vivian's brother Julian died suddenly 2 years later, Renata was no longer just his widow. She was, in the eyes of the extended family, the last living piece of Vivian's legacy. And that's when the real Vivian Ashford opened her eyes in a hospital bed 3 states away, with no name on her chart and no family looking for her. Vivian woke up disoriented, unable to speak for weeks, in a state-funded care facility that had classified her as an unidentified patient. Her belongings had been lost in the wreck, and her face, altered by the crash and years of muscle atrophy, no longer matched old photographs closely enough for a routine search to flag her. For nearly a year, Vivian existed as a Jane Doe, rebuilding her memory piece by piece, while another woman spent her money 3 states away. When she finally regained enough memory to give investigators her name, the response was almost worse than silence. Vivian Ashford, they told her, had already been found. She was alive, well, and living at the family estate in Charleston. It took a private investigator, hired quietly with the last of Vivian's disability funds, to uncover the truth. The woman living as Vivian Ashford had a different fingerprint file entirely. Vivian spent the next several months building a case in silence. She tracked down her old dentist for records Renata could never fake. She found a security guard from the hospital who remembered a woman who visited Vivian and left with a folder of personal documents the same week Vivian was declared dead. Piece by piece, the fabricated life Renata built began to show its seams. But Vivian made a decision. She wasn't going to expose Renata quietly through a courtroom filing. She was going to do it in front of everyone who had been lied to. Tonight is that room. The occasion is the reading of Walter Ashford's will, 6 months after the family patriarch's death, and Renata's formal acceptance of the $40 million Ashford estate. Vivian arrived hours earlier, hired quietly onto the catering staff under a false name, close enough to watch, far enough to remain unseen. As the family lawyer begins to read the terms of inheritance, Renata rises to accept it in Vivian's name. Vivian steps forward before the toast is finished. She doesn't shout. She simply says, "That name isn't yours to hold." The room goes silent. Renata laughs it off as a misunderstanding, tells the guests the woman is clearly confused, perhaps even unstable. It's the same tactic that's worked for 4 years. But this time, Vivian isn't alone in the room with only her word. First, the family lawyer, at Vivian's prior request, plays a security feed recovered from the estate's own system, showing Renata alone in Walter's study weeks earlier, opening a wall safe using a code only the real Vivian should have known. Second, the lawyer reads aloud a court-ordered DNA comparison, quietly filed the week before, confirming the woman standing in front of them shares Ashford blood, and the woman seated at the head of the table does not. Third, Vivian reaches into her apron and places a small object on the table, a silver locket, engraved on the inside with a childhood nickname only she and her late father ever used. Renata has worn a replica of that locket for 3 years. She has never once opened it, because she never knew what was engraved inside. The family lawyer closes the folder. Renata's smile finally breaks. 2 security guards move toward her as the room erupts in gasps and disbelief. As Renata is escorted out, she stops at the doorway and turns back, not to apologize, but to level the field one final time. "You think I did this alone," she says. "Ask your precious family lawyer who filed the death certificate without a body." The room turns toward the very man who just read Vivian's DNA results aloud. His face says everything his mouth won't. In the weeks that follow, investigators confirm Renata had help from inside the estate the entire time. The family attorney, bribed early on to push through Vivian's legal death and bury the paperwork that would have raised questions. Renata faces charges of identity theft, fraud, and grand larceny. The attorney faces disbarment and his own criminal charges. Vivian, finally restored to her legal identity, reclaims the Ashford estate, her foundation, and her name. What makes this story unsettling isn't just what Renata took. It's how long it took anyone to notice she'd taken it. A family surrounded by lawyers, accountants, and lifelong friends failed to see the substitution happening in plain sight, one memory, one habit, one photograph at a time. Vivian later said the hardest part of coming back wasn't proving who she was. It was realizing how easily the people who loved her had let someone else replace her. Was justice really served, or did the family lose more than they got back? If you were in that room, would you have spotted the signs before Vivian ever had to prove herself? Tell me in the comments, at what point in this story did you know something was wrong? And if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, wait until you hear what happened when a mother came home from a business trip to find her own daughter didn't recognize her, because someone else had been raising her in secret. That story is coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on, because you will not want to miss it. Subscribe for more real-life stories of betrayal, justice, and the truth that always finds its way home.